Good evening. The hour of 6:30 having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and the city website. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting material will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meeting email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the board is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. As a reminder, the minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Board members, please be sure to turn on your microphone when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphone on. So we'll turn to the introduction of board members. My name is Joe Hoppick. I'm the chair, and to my left,
Jane Taylor.
Edward Guyot.
Richard Clough.
and first we'll take up the minutes from September 3rd. And we have, I think, one correction to take care of. Jane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed lines 31 and 32. It didn't make sense to me, and I think maybe a word is missing because it says applicants not present and questioned what next steps the board to take Evan Clements. And I don't think we're planning to take him anywhere. So perhaps it should read what next steps the board should take, period, and then start a new sentence.
I agree with that interpretation.
So it was just that was the only item I had.
Yeah, that's the only one I have as well. So I think a motion to entertain, I would like to entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended. Attorney Taylor.
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Minutes are accepted as amended. So what, I'm not aware of any unfinished business, and the first item up for consideration tonight is ZBA 24-19. I'll read the statement. Petitioner Timothy Sampson of Sampson Architects, PLLC, requests a variance for property located at 143 Main Street, tax map 584-061-000. This property is in the downtown core district and is owned by 173 Main Street LLC of West Swansea. The petitioner requests a variance to permit a two-family duplex where it is not permitted per table 4-1 of the zoning regulations. Do we have a representative of the applicant here tonight?
Mr. Chair, I don't see anybody in the audience for this application at this time.
Well, I don't think there's enough information in the pack. I'm not willing to continue this again. And I don't think there's enough information in the application to make a decision. Does anybody disagree with that? Attorney Taylor?
I don't disagree at all, and I think I made my position clear at our last meeting. And frankly, I think we should move to deny the application.
The degree of your clarity cleared it up for me last meeting, so I would like to hear that motion.
Okay, well, I move that we deny ZBA 2024-19 for a variance for property located at 143 Main Street, tax map 584-061-000 in the downtown core district.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. My only comment is, at our last meeting, these applicants failed to appear, didn't give us the courtesy of a phone call or an email saying, hey, we have a problem or whatever have you. And while I think the application is sufficient to state an application under the variance statute, there are questions that I would have of the applicant had he appeared. So I'm of the view that there is insufficient information in the application itself to act on the application. So I will be voting in favor of Jane's motion for that reason. Anybody else want to chime in?
That was a very good summary. I would agree with that.
Okay, fair enough. If there are no other comments, I'll take a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Oh, it's unanimous. Okay, motion carries.
And just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, that's a denial with no prejudice.
No, it's complete prejudice. There is no reservation of prejudice.
So I guess my question is, will the applicant be able to reapply with sufficient information presented?
If he has a change in circumstance, or, he meets the Morgenstern, or whatever the case is, criteria, yes.
Okay.
I would just add, it's basically the Fisher rule down through the ages.
Right. And I never remember, that's Dover case, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I want to remember the more complicated one, for whatever reason. So the next item is ZBA 2024-24. And pardon me if I mispronounce any names. The petitioner, Gary M.G., requests a variance for property located at 42 Reservoir Street, tax map 571-006-000. This property is in the medium-density district. The petitioner requests a variance to replace entrance steps 7.57 feet from the front setback, where 15 feet is required per Article 3.5.2 of the zoning regulations. Do we have an applicant here tonight for that case?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman.
Have a seat at the table. You just state your name and,
Yes, my name is Gary M.
let me just, I'm sorry, I do want staff to brief us first before you proceed. That's okay?
Pardon?
I just want staff to brief us on your application first.
But you can stay right there.
Yeah, you don't have to go anywhere.
Okay,
I'm ju-
okay, yeah,
it-
yeah, yeah.
It was premature to have you start, so I just want to have staff give us a brief introduction. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evan
welcome.
Clements, planner. The subject property is an existing .374 acre parcel located at 42 Reservoir Street in the medium-density zoning district. The property contains an existing approximately 3,000 square foot two-family home built in 1890 with a detached 342 square foot garage. The property has approximately 200 feet of frontage along Reservoir Street. The property is surrounded by the medium-density district on the north, south, and west, with a conservation district to the east. Surrounding uses are residential, with Robin Hood Park and the reservoir directly to the east of the property. The existing structures on the property appear to be non-conforming, as they are located partially within the front yard setback. Section 352, Dimensions and Sitting of the Land Development Code, requires a 15-foot front setback, and the structures appear to be closer to 10 feet from the property line. According to the submitted application, the existing masonry front steps are located 7.57 feet from the front property line. The front steps are considered to be a structure that is exempt from the front yard setback requirements per section 1.3.3 setbacks and build-to dimensions, subsection A4AI of the Land Development Code. Access landings up to 25 square feet, structures necessary to afford access for persons with physical disabilities, and awnings are also exempt under this section. Due to the proposal to install the new porch and roof overhang with ground-mounted support posts and 54 square feet of landing area, this design does not qualify for any of the exemptions I just listed to the front yard setback, and a variance is required to move forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Can you just repeat the frontage on Reservoir Street one more time?
It's about 258 feet of frontage.
Okay. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, just for clarification, our agenda indicated the front setback where 50 feet is required. Am I correct in stating it should be the front setback where 15 feet is required?
That's correct, Madam Vice
Okay.
Chair. The agenda was a typo.
Okay, thank you.
Now, sir, you may proceed, if you'd like.
Well, my name is Gary Emge. I live at 42 Reservoir Street here in Keene. Been there for 35 years.
Okay, and If you could speak to the elements of your variance application?
Oh, yes, I can go through those. As I said, the residence says 42 Reservoir Street, occupied by myself and others. The purpose of the variance is to replace existing front masonry structure of 6 foot 1 inch by 6 foot 2 inch, 38 square foot, with a new structure which includes a 5 foot 2 by 10 foot 4 wood deck and a 6.2, 12 foot 4 roof supported by 4 columns. The existing masonry structure is in serious need of replacement. The new structure would not extend further from the building to the street than does the existing structure. The only difference would be that the width of the structure would be enlarged from 6 feet 1 inch to about 10 feet, 10 feet 4. And the residence does not meet the current setback requirements, and so a zoning variance is sought. There would be, let's see. There would be no effect on anyone other than some intermittent construction noise, usually between 9 and 3 weekdays, with occasional possible Saturday exceptions. The proposed structure would be contained within the footprint, excluding the steps to the street, as does the existing masonry structure. So other than the steps that lead up to the deck, the main structure would not intrude further into the setback. The current masonry structure is 7.57 feet to the property line, and the proposed structure would be the same. The new structure would provide cover from rain, ice, and snow that the existing structure does not. Curb appeal would be enhanced, and the city of Keene would probably get a slight assessment increase. It says, in my estimation, surrounding property values would be enhanced as a result of the removal of the masonry structure, which has become over the years in bad shape due to sagging and cracked concrete. All of the properties on Reservoir Street currently encroach on the existing front setback, and this includes the City of Keene's Robin Hood pool structure. So there is a relatively insignificant addition to the front of the residence. 54 square feet versus the current 38 square feet. And as I mentioned, current properties on Reservoir Street already encroach onto the front setback limits. This would allow a new roof structure to protect the front entrance from weather, remove space constraint for possible future ramp access, and attempt to age-proof the property. The proposed new structure will add space that in the future, here again, may be required for ramp access. Current elderly occupant, other than myself, is experiencing mobility and balance issues that may have to be addressed at some later date, which hopefully not. And that is all that I have written here.
Okay. Attorney Taylor, do you want to give it a first shot?
Sure. I have a few questions, and I realize that the steps themselves are exempt from setback requirements, but I couldn't really figure out from the drawings exactly where the steps are going to be off this proposed deck.
The steps would come right off the front of the deck, the proposed deck.
And,
I have drawings here if you'd like to see them. I mean, I thought I had submitted.
well, we have some drawings. I don't know if there were any additional submitted. But with the new steps from where the bottom of the new steps is going to be,
Yes.
the last step, how far is that going to be from the street or the property line?
That would be, that would go out approximately a foot more, okay, than the deck, because the roof would stay within the limits of the current structure, which has an overhang, and the steps would only protrude maybe a foot beyond that.
And is there any, did you look at the possibility of potentially having the steps or a potential ramp come off the side of this proposed deck as opposed to front?
Well, you know, yes, I have, and
Okay.
I've looked at it, and my preference would be to come directly off the front. The walkway is there, and it didn't seem like it would lend itself very well to steps on either side, you know, coming out the side. At some point, if there's a ramp required, a ramp would probably go up the side.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because, you know, knowing roughly what the houses on Reservoir Street look like,
Yep.
there's not a heck of a lot of room to put something there between the houses and the street. I don't believe there's a sidewalk there, so it's kind of like
No, it's no sidewalk.
you're kind of jumping off, in the summer, there's a lot of traffic. I guess my other question is, when you talked about the construction impacts, what do you propose, or how would you propose to control the construction vehicles, because they would be impeding traffic to the other residents?
Well,
There's no place else to put them.
that's true, that's true. Well, this is how shall I say, this is a job that is not going to be a major undertaking. I used to build houses way long time ago, 50 years ago. And so all of this work I was going to do myself. And so whatever vehicles there are, which I have one and a trailer, would be the same that would be there no matter what, so. And I might add, as you come off the steps, there may be 6 feet to the front setback, but there is quite a bit more grass and lawn area until you actually get to the road. Okay, so I don't know the exact number, but
So you're not necessarily contemplating having a cement truck coming in and
no,
pouring the
no, no,
footings?
actually, whatever cement, I'll be mixing it myself, so, no, this is kind of a low budget, low key, kind of a endeavor here, so.
Sure.
Yeah, and I guess one of the other concerns I have is, would you object to any kind of condition that would say that you wouldn't enclose this deck so that it wouldn't become another part of the house itself?
Oh, I certainly, absolutely. I had nothing like that in mind. I really didn't. It would be all open, you know, other than porch columns and maybe a bench or something like that. But there would be there'd be nothing permanent about that at all. I mean, enclosed.
And I have one quick
Sure,
question
sure.
for Mr. Clements, and that is, I don't believe this meets the level where it would go before the planning board, am I correct?
That's correct, Madam Vice Chair. If the variance was granted, the next step would be a building permit to perform the work.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the moment?
None?
Okay, I have one, or about probably more than one after you answer the first one, but
Okay.
you said that the house itself is within the setback, the house footprint? And this is the picture I'm looking at, so I'm
Right.
sure okay, I
Yes.
probably can't see it that well, but I'm just trying to get an idea of where the house footprint sits in relation to the setback.
I guess I don't have the exact answer for you. I thought it was somewhere like 12 feet or something like that.
So it would be 2 or 3 feet within it?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the house is 13 feet, now, a house is 13 feet from the setback, 13 and a half feet. And then the deck, and the porch roof are 6.2. Subtract that, you're about 7.5 feet from the front setback. And then you add that one stair tread, which is probably another 10, 11 inches. And so you're probably 7 feet.
that's sort of, that gets to where you are at 7.57 feet, I guess, is that how you arrive at that?
Yes,
That makes sense, okay.
yeah.
Do you know if the other houses along the same street are similarly situated in terms of this footprint being within the setback?
Well, they all are.
They all are.
They all are. And the pool building across the street, I think they may have a foot, I don't know, of setback. You know, they are right on the street. According to the GIS that you have.
Okay. And in relation, your lot size, I know Evans mentioned, what was the lot size again?
It's-
.375, I think,
Oh, okay, 374, 375?
something like that.
Okay. I know I saw it in there and then he repeated it, okay. Mr. Clef, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to clarify
Oh,
that if
okay.
you added 7.57 plus 6.1, that's
Okay.
where you came up with 13.6 away from the line.
Yeah, that makes sense to me now. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, looking at the application and the map that we have up on the screen at the moment, obviously, I don't know how the house is configured. Is there any other entryway to
Yes.
the house?
Yes, there is a side porch. If you were to look at the front of the house, there's steps leading down, and there's a side porch to the left, and that is a basement entrance to the upper apartment level where I live. And then there is a lower apartment, and there's an entrance on that porch as well. So the house is, from the street, it looks fairly small, but it's sit on the side of a hill, and so there is, if you look from the back, it's a fairly big structure, but
Yes.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I asked that question is I'm looking at, of course, the most difficult criteria that we have to deal with, which is the hardship.
yeah.
And trying to determine whether or not, because the issue is actually a deck, it's not the front steps. Whether or not there's any logical place that you could put that deck. And that's why I asked if there was another entryway.
Well, I mean, there is a porch. There is a porch. You go down quite a bit of steep stairs from the street level to get to it.
And that porch is enclosed, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's on the left side of the house?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. Well, it's enclosed by the fact that at some point, someone added storm windows around it. I mean, it's not a living space per se. It's only can be used as a porch. It's not heated or
Yep.
at any sort of thing like that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, following up on the entrances, from the street, the
Yep.
street view, really, if somebody was in a wheelchair, really, the only way to get to that level from the street view would be the ramp from the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Everything on the inside would be staircases, so the other entrance is literally a floor down.
Oh, yes.
So it would be very inconvenient to try and figure out how to you would basically need an elevator.
Yeah, you would, yeah.
Okay.
And as I said, this is speculation into the future, but my thoughts here is that at some point, it certainly might be required, so.
Okay. Does anyone have any further questions of the applicant, or should we close the public hearing? Is there any public comment to be obtained from tonight's meeting, for or against?
I have to do something with the front steps. It's gotten to the point where it just needs to be repaired or replaced. And preference here is, you spend the time and money, do the job that you really want to do, if possible. So that, and, you set aside the time to do something, then, you might as well try to do it the way you think it should be, so.
Any other questions?
Since we did bring up the question about noise,
Yes.
so the demolition of the existing would be hammer and possibly a jackhammer for a short amount of
I
time?
doubt if it'll be a jackhammer.
All right. So a nice sledgehammer.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
okay.
nice sledgehammer, yeah.
And then the construction is essentially the noise that you would hear with either a pneumatic nailer or by hand.
Yes,
Nail.
saws, saws.
Yeah,
and
right,
that
cutting with a saw, so pretty much sounds that you actually hear around the neighborhood, especially on a weekend.
Would that include occasional cursing when you hit your thumb?
Yeah, well, I've got a few of those already on my fingers,
Believe
so.
it.
But and usually, any noise happens between 9 and 3, because I'm not getting out there too early in the morning, and I don't work 8 hours a day, so.
Okay, and I'll just ask again one more time. Is there any public comment from anybody here, for or against? All right, seeing none, we'll move on from that. If there are no other questions for the applicant, we can close the public hearing and start deliberations, if that's the consensus of the board. I'm seeing heads nod, so that's what we'll do. Public hearing is closed, and we can deliberate.
Does this mean I leave?
No, you can stay right there.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, if we might have another question or two for you as we go along, and then we'll open and
Okay,
close
yep,
the
yep.
meeting.
All right.
But if you're comfortable where you are, just stay put.
Okay.
I guess I'll start. I don't see anything about this application that would jeopardize public safety in any way. There's gonna be plenty of, from what I can tell from the picture anyway, plenty of sight distance view on each side of the property as you're coming and going from it. I don't think a porch is gonna impair that view. And the setback, of course, would be designed in part to prevent something like that from happening, and also to protect against encroaching the road too close, and I don't think that's gonna happen either. So some of the purposes for this zoning restriction are not really germane to this case or this application. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, as I had mentioned earlier, one of the things we really need to examine is, what's the hardship? And let's put it this way, you're not about to move the house to rebuild the steps.
I got what I got. I had what I had.
And, it's kind of like the lot itself. It's an unusual shape. The house clearly was built many, many years ago. And it was built too close to Reservoir Street for current zoning. So I think, it is what it is, basically. I think my only concern, as I mentioned earlier in my questions, is, and we've seen this before, not to cast any aspersions on the applicant, but when people build decks, then a few years later, they like to enclose it. So if we move to approve this application, I would like to add a condition, as we've done a couple other times, that the deck remain open and not be enclosed, so it doesn't become additional living space. But I agree with Attorney Hoppick. Certainly, there doesn't seem to be any threat to public health or safety. There's, certainly a lot of detriment to the applicant if he's not able to do this. I can see, improving the entryway as improving the value of the property. So generally, I think this is one of those applications, that demonstrates the reason of why you have a variance, because there are times when there definitely need to be relief from the zoning ordinance.
I think one other comment I'd like to add to Attorney Taylor's comments is that, given the age of the property when the house was built, I presume that the zoning ordinance came into play after
Well after.
the house was built, well after, and it
You
may
and I
have
were
changed
teenagers
several
when that
times.
first came about, 1970, give or take.
So it's been around.
Yep.
It's predated the regulations, so that creates a hardship right there in my mind, special circumstances, in addition to what you added, Attorney Taylor.
On the hardship criteria, I agree that the configuration of the lot and its size, in conjunction with the placement of the house and the unusual topography of that lot, because it's sort of, you start first floor and go down the hill, and it looks like you have 3 floors. But you have, or 2, but I think those 3 things together create your hardship in relation to the setback. So, and I agree with that too, so. I also think that if anything, you're gonna increase the value of your own home, and with that, the surrounding properties will piggyback you on that. So I don't see any problem with diminished property values. And I agree with Attorney Taylor that any loss that you would suffer as a result of a denial would not be outweighed by any gain to the public for denying the variance. So I think you meet that criteria too. And as I said before, I don't see any public health or safety concern here. You're not going to alter the character of the neighborhood.
Pardon me?
You're not going to alter the character of your neighborhood by putting in a porch and a new set of
No, I
stairs.
wasn't even painting it red, no. It was gonna be,
Okay, well,
so-
I don't think we'll need that condition.
Oh, okay.
But I do agree with Attorney Taylor on the condition of not enclosing it, so.
No, that's fine. Fine with
Okay.
me, yeah.
I don't see anything here that would make it contrary to the public interest. It's, quite the opposite. I think the public interest is served when property owners can utilize their property in a fair and reasonable way, and that's what he's doing. It's what he's coming to us to ask for. So I'm inclined to support this with the condition of non-enclosure. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, just
Yeah,
so I'm
yes.
taking good notes, can you articulate your reasoning for the spirit of the ordinance being observed again for me?
Well, the spirit of the ordinance, I think, goes to the public health and safety and welfare issues, and also the, whether or not the variance, if granted, would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. I don't see either one of those things happening here. And consistent with my other remarks, I think an unenclosed porch and a new set of stairs would increase safety, not only for the occupant, but for any guests and visitors and whatnot, but would also not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. It would, in fact, help improve values there in the long run. So, and that's with or without a ramp. I'm not even worried about that right now, so. Attorney Taylor.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the spirit of the ordinance, the density requirements, if I'm reading this correctly, is to basically provide for, medium intensity residential use. And this is definitely not changing that. So as I see it, it's within the spirit of the ordinance.
Thanks for keeping us on track, by the way. All right. Does anybody have any further comments on this application? If not, I don't want to rush it, but we certainly can entertain a motion as to how we want to dispose of it. Oh, okay. Attorney Taylor, you want to make that motion so you get the condition nailed
Okay, I'll
down?
take a shot at it. I would move to approve the request for variance ZBA 2024-24 for property located at 42 Reservoir Street, tax map 571-006-000, with a request to replace the entrance steps 7.57 feet from the front setback where 15 feet is required per Article 3.5.2 of the zoning regulation, with a condition that the proposed deck not be enclosed.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Guyette seconded that, and we pretty much discussed all the factors. If anybody wants to add anything more to that, you're welcome to do so. But I think I've stated where I'm coming from on this, and I didn't hear anybody disagreeing with that, so. All those in favor of the motion? What, you want to go through the steps? Yeah, well, that's probably a good idea. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? It's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? Unanimous. Owing to the special conditions of the property, which we've identified, that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? That's unanimous. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? Unanimous. So on the main motion to approve 2024-24, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Congratulations, you're all done. Now you can get up.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, appreciate it.
Now, the next one, let me just find my. The next one is 2024-25, petitioner Jennifer Shea of 190 Nutting Road in Jaffrey requests a variance for property located at 973 Marlborough Road, tax map 249-004-000. This property is in the rural district and is owned by BTD Properties LLC of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. The petitioner requests a variance to operate a light retail establishment in the rural district per Article 8.3.2.A, D of the zoning regulations. Go ahead, Evan.
Thank you,
Go on,
Mr.
Jim.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Evan Clements, planner. Subject property is an existing approximately 1.9 acre parcel located at 973 Marlborough Road in the rural district. The property contains an existing 6,970-foot building constructed in 2003. The current use is considered a mixed-use office and single-family residence. The property is split by the Marlborough-Keene municipal boundary, with approximately 1.1 acres of the lot residing in Keene and the remaining 0.08 acres in Marlborough. The building itself is also split by the municipal boundary, with the residential use on the Keene side and the office use bisected on both the Keene and Marlborough. The property is surrounded by the rural zoning district to the north and west and Marlborough's R2 residential district to the south and east. Surrounding uses include single-family residential to the north, vacant parcels to the immediate west, with the Chester County Correctional Facility located approximately 1,300 feet to the west up 101. That's New Hampshire State Road 101.
Yes.
The property has been utilized in various commercial uses throughout its history. The most recent use was a private behavioral school for children with learning and behavioral challenges. Before that, it was a model log home and sales operation for log home construction. The existing building was constructed for that purpose in 2003. The property has also, throughout its history, received approval for a restaurant use, convenience store sometime in the mid-1980s, and the use of that property in commercial aspects goes even farther back into the 70s. Land use authority between Marlborough and Keene for this property has been murky. With the current building was constructed, there was an agreement between the two communities that Keene would be responsible for permitting that project. Staff has been working to reaffirm that agreement for future projects and to give the owner of this property some clarity, specifically when it comes to where they should be going to get building permits. It has been, as this board is aware, this property recently came before you for the Live Free Recovery. They got approval to operate that business from you, and then they went to Marlborough for a special exception. So it seems to be the practice is still currently that any use of the property outside of a residential use is going before both communities currently for land use approvals.
What happened in Marlboro with the special exception?
The zoning board of Marlboro denied it on a 2-2 vote, and the applicant chose to not move forward further with that application.
So the Live Free Recovery model is set aside for the moment.
That is correct.
Okay.
I believe they are no longer seeking, or they're no longer planning to purchase the property, so it is back for sale.
Oh, all right, okay.
And so the current applicant is hoping to purchase the property for her proposed use.
Okay. Yes.
So since I'm absolutely unfamiliar with the Marlboro zoning ordinance, what does it permit in their R2 zone? Would this need to, once again, go before their, whether it's zoning board or whether it's, if it's not a permitted use?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm also not familiar with the Marlboro zoning ordinance. So I believe Mrs. Shea might have an answer to that question when we're ready
Okay.
to hear from her.
Great, thank you.
We'll be right with you, though. Just be patient. Does anybody have any more questions of Mr. Evans? No? All right. Now we're ready to hear from you.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Just state your name and address when you get seated.
Yes. Jennifer Shea, 190 Nutting Road, Jaffrey.
Okay. If you want to speak to the criteria, the floor is yours.
Okay, so, there was the written narrative, which mostly has been gone over, but I'll go ahead and read this. The property this proposed variance relates to is located on State Highway Route 101, within a mile from downtown Marlboro, with the closest structure on the same side of the road in the other direction being the Cheshire County House of Corrections in Keene. The current owner of the property, is BTD Properties LLC, and prospective owner JLS Properties LLC, operated by me, Jennifer Shea, the applicant for this variance. The purpose of the proposed variance is to allow a retail consignment and multi-dealer shop fitting the description of 8.3.2 AD retail establishment light to operate on the premises of this unique mixed-use residential commercial property. A log cabin turned into a quintessential New England boutique outlet, which, in addition to antiques and consignment, would invite local artisans, crafters, and goods producers to sell their products as part of the group shop. An establishment that embodies the community around it and takes part in fundraisers for local nonprofits and school groups. The most recent use of the property was as a school serving the behavioral health sector, operating under the use definition of offices. Retail use has been approved for this property previously for a convenience store to operate in the building. As the need for office space has been greatly reduced since the COVID pandemic, the owner has struggled to fill the space or sell it under the current zoning restrictions for its use. Okay. Any questions on that part, or shall I just continue?
No, just go ahead and go through it all, and then we'll ask you if we,
Okay.
as necessary.
Okay, so section 4, application criteria, requesting a variance requested for Article 3.1.5 of the zoning regulations to permit retail establishment light, 8.3.2.AD. And then briefly describe your response to the criteria. So 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because the proposed business to operate on the property would not be a high-volume, large-scale operation that would produce excessive traffic or noise pollution, negatively affecting residential properties in the area. The location of the property is not in a densely populated family neighborhood. It's on a State Highway Route 101. With dedicated entrance and exit, as well as ample parking, this property suits a small retail operation well. Hours of operation will be limited to those customary of a small community, with taking into account seasonal changes. In addition to the retail business which would operate on the property, the residential unit will be utilized in that capacity as a residential dwelling as intended by the current zoning. 2, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the existing form along State Highway Route 101 is a mix of residential and small businesses, many being home-based businesses operating within a short distance of the property. A boutique shop of the nature of the one being proposed in the setting of a log cabin fits in well with this low-density neighborhood. While the property sits in the residential district and part of the existing structure will be used for retail purposes, the residential portion of the building will be utilized as residential. 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting the variance would allow for a small community-oriented venture to inhabit a currently unoccupied space that has historically had issues with occupancy due to zoning restrictions, as well as it being a mixed-use, both commercial and residential property, with the buildings physically connected. 4, if the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because the property would be utilized, well cared for, and maintained with both the commercial and residential units occupied. In its current state of not having any tenants, the unoccupied building has the potential to negatively affect property values for surrounding properties should their owners wish to sell. With the county jail just down the road, the small business would help to create a buffer between the residential homes and penal institution. 5, unnecessary hardship. A, owning to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because I, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because the standard use for residential property is typically single-family occupancy in low-traffic areas, which this property does not conform to. The unique makeup of this property being a large log cabin housing a residence and commercial space sitting directly on State Highway 101, as well as the significant restrictions on options for renovation due to its structure, render the property unsuitable for the majority of currently permitted uses. With the large parking area designed for traffic moving around the site and the interior commercial space plotted for offices, this property has been designed for commercial use. And II, the proposed use is a reasonable one because the type of business being presented as a small community-friendly operation that would be in harmony with the directly surrounding area where many home-based businesses operate. There are few uses for this particular structure that would fit the definition of residential and utilize both the commercial and residential units. The residential unit would be used residentially as intended by the current zoning, while additionally the commercial section of the building would be utilized in a low-impact, community-focused manner. No significant changes would be undertaken to the exterior of the building, with only minor interior renovation to accommodate the retail business. B, explain how, if the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to establish a reasonable use of it. Strict conformity would render a majority of the property unusable. In this instance, the property is partly commercial and partly residential. If strictly conforming to code, not even duplex residential units would be allowed. For the entirety of this property to be fully utilized and conform to code, more than half of the interior square footage would require renovation to convert it, and the center corridor connecting the two distinct buildings to an unusually large single-family detached residential structure. Single-family structures rarely require the amount of parking currently provided at this site. With a good portion of the non-structure space taken up with paved driveway, an unusually small amount of green space is available for the square footage this property would consume as a single-family residence. Historically, many variances have been approved for this property, which denotes in and of itself that the property is far beyond the ability to use for purely residential purposes without extensive modifications.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Taylor?
I have a question for Mr. Clements. Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm a little confused, because, our first charge is to decide whether or not this is the right application, do we need to hear it? And with looking at the, definition of retail establishment light, which is what I was actually focused on. And then looking back at section 3.1.5, permitted uses, residential use, single family. But then in commercial uses, it lists retail establishment light subject to a conditional use permit. So I'm kind of curious as to why exactly this is before us. Is it because of the mixed use, or if you could just clarify that for us?
Absolutely, Madam Vice Chair. So the code reference you're referring to is related to our cottage court overlay conditional use permit design scheme, which allows for limited commercial activity within a cottage court development under some rather strict use standards. So the applicant is seeking a variance to allow a traditional light retail use, not constrained by the use standards in the cottage court, because she's not proposing a cottage court.
And
Go ahead, yeah.
if I could note, we don't have a copy of that updated ordinance. So the conditional use permit that I'm looking at, that's on page 3-2, is that a different conditional use permit requirement than the cottage court?
The only way retail is currently allowed in a residential zoning district is through the cottage court
So
conditional use permit.
that's a change that we don't have a copy of.
That's correct. I've got them here for you.
Okay, so you can understand my confusion. It's,
I understand.
if we don't have the proper things to look at, it's hard to figure out.
Yeah, so we, when we were looking at this application at the staff level, staff was aware of it. I should have given you a heads up on that. I do apologize for that. But this is, it's for a unrestrained light retail use without a conditional use permit. Just for example, one of the use standards for the cottage court is, I think it limits the retail space to 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. This is significantly greater than that.
So the new cottage court is not, I guess I'm confused too, because the new cottage court ordinance, that's for more than one residential unit?
Yeah, and so like another one of it is the retail can only be on the first floor. When there's residential above it, it's got to be on the corner of an existing public road. There are significant constraints that would make it so it would not be a viable option for the applicant. The applicant would not be able to get a cottage court conditional use permit without significant investment and modification into the property.
So cottage court applies when there's only a single residence?
No,
Because there's only one residence at issue here.
correct. So I guess what I'm trying to say, Madam Vice Chair, is that the cottage court is not germane to this application.
Right, which is why I was kind of curious about the conditional use permit only being applicable to cottage courts.
Correct. For retail in a residential district at this time.
Okay, well, I have to admit, it doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe when we've got the updated ordinance, it will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could I get some clarification on the square footage for retail and the square footage for residential?
Off the top of my head, I think it's about 4,000, so the whole building is just under 7,000. And I think it's something along the lines of 3,500-ish commercial in the office use, and then the remainder being residential. If you bear with me a moment, I can.
I think the applicant might have some
It's
information in that
about
regard.
2,400 for the commercial and 1,600 for the residential, I believe, for a total of 4,000 square feet. It's like 4,100 something, 4,106 or something, and it's,
Yeah, and that's a living area. So that's a heated livable space with, and then there's a 1,200 square foot basement in there, for example, and then the wood deck and a framed open porch, which gets you up to that about 7,000 square foot of building area total.
So the retail space is about 2,400 feet. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that would be accurate, yes.
Great, thank you.
Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, as far as the retail use, is this all going to be interior, or do you plan on any outdoor display or outdoor, I don't know, I don't want to call them kiosks, but, sales areas?
I understand what you're saying. So there is the outdoor play area, the outdoor fenced area. And I am planning on having things out there like for gardening and, pots and trellises and those types of things outside in that area. The, planning department, these guys have answered a lot of hypothetical questions for me and made me think a lot. So like, for example, if I were to put, I'd like to put some rocking chairs possibly out on the front deck, out on the front porch, and put price tags on them, but have them there for people to be able to sit and enjoy while, or wait for their spouse while they're in browsing. Out in front, kind of by the sign there, I'd like to do like a seasonal display, in the summer, have maybe some type of thing that looks like a farm with, metal farm animals, or in, the fall, do some scarecrows with a bale of hay. I'd also like to be able to take part in, for example, the Marlboro Townwide Yard Sale, and be able to use space outside to be able to take part in the yard sale. And, that space outside, would be both to the Keene side of the structure, there's the residence that has the deck off of it, and then there's a grassy area. And I would like to use that area to set up for, potentially yard sale type items. And then as well in the front area. The subject of traffic and people stopping on Route 101 has been brought up to me. And to keep people from stopping on 101, because right there isn't too much of a breakdown lane, but in terms of paved surface. But there is quite a bit of gravel area before the lawn starts. And, one of the things I'll have to get into the permitting processes and figure out what's required from all the different aspects. But I was thinking that I could put out, orange cones that are on the right before the grass to keep people from, stopping on the side of 101. So they wouldn't be within the breakdown lane. Theoretically, they'd be on the grass, out of the way, but it would keep people from stopping there. And have them maybe, directed with a sign, a bigger sign into the parking area. Because, there's the 21 spaces, so there's plenty of parking for people to come in and to be able to, view things at the yard sale, to keep them from parking on 101 in that type of an event.
Do you know what the speed limit is right there as you're approaching that property? the posted speed limit? Is it 30 or 20, or 35?
It goes from 30 to 35 and then to 40 around there, right in there.
But doesn't it drop slower as you're heading into Marlboro itself?
Yes,
Okay,
it goes backwards.
all right.
Yeah. After you pass it, it goes down to 35 and then to 30.
So in this picture here, and this is what I can't remember, because I did drive by the other day, but
Yeah.
you got your driveway right there. Is there a big U shape? In other words, is there
Yes.
another entrance? So you have a big U shape, right?
The enter is on the Keene side and the exit is on the Marlboro side, and they're marked enter only and exit only.
Okay, I think I see that sign in the photograph, so.
Yeah.
Can you just explain a little bit how you propose to manage traffic? I know you have 21 spaces for parking, so that's a plus.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll come in the enter and the exit.
Not much more you can do, right?
Right, I mean, so, there is a pretty wide area. The original site, some of the original site plans that I saw actually had parking on both sides. It had it along the front of the building as well as along the side of 101 side.
Okay.
And there are no parking spaces there on the side of 101 side. So there's plenty of room on that side for people to come in and go and maneuver their vehicles around in there. Other than that, there's a handicap space marked. There's also the space in front of the handicapped entrance that there's no parking there. I'm not sure how else you would want me to answer this question, what you're looking for specifically.
No, I'm just looking for what your thoughts are on managing the traffic, that's all.
Yep, if there are delivery trucks, there appears to be plenty of space for them to park, directly behind where the sign would be on the 101 side, but inside the parking lot.
Okay,
You could easily fit a UPS truck in there and still have people parked in those spaces and easily have them be able to back up and pull in to those spaces on the other side. With the truck behind them, there would still be plenty of space there.
all right. Does anybody else have any other questions? Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, again for Mr. Clemens. Does the Keene Inn have regulation of yard sales? Either by zoning or anything else?
I don't believe there's anything in the zoning ordinance. There might be something in the sign code
Okay.
about yard sale signs. I want to say there might be something in the city code of ordinances saying that, like, you can have 3 a year, but I'm sort of speculating at the moment.
Or guessing.
Yeah, that's probably a better word for it.
Well, I'm asking again because
I don't
with
remember it, though.
with a split property, it's possible that Keene would have some limitation on yard sales that would be different from Marlboro, which would definitely impact the layout of the retail business.
So the site plan that I have up on the screen right now is the site plan from the model log home. And you can see this line right here is the municipal boundary. So while more of that office commercial use on the building is there, most of the site itself is on the Keene side.
So looking at this site plan, it's from 2003, and I don't have the kind of expertise to figure out if what was on this site plan has changed other than the building itself, which is, pretty consistent with what it was built for. But as far as other items here, whether it's, grass whatever else is on the site plan. Do you know if this is relatively consistent with what's there now?
I believe it to be fairly accurate. I drive by the property every day, personally, to come and go into the city. So I've had a chance to look at it. Possibly the only change here is, I don't think this is showing the existing stockade fence area that the behavioral health use installed to create a playground area. But I would say it is fundamentally the same site.
That's that fence in the picture, right? That goes to the left of the building?
Correct.
Okay. Does not appear to be in that, yep. You don't propose any changes to the structure of the building, do you?
Minor modifications in the commercial side. I'd like to take out some of the walls, which obviously would need permitting to go through. More so, it has a radiant heat floor,
Okay.
so I don't want to do too much modification. So I'm thinking of taking some of the walls down to half walls, just to open it up more. I had my contractor come in and look at it. He looked, he said that, the ceiling, that it's all trussed, in the roof, and that, there wouldn't be any, issues with removing pretty much any of the walls structurally. There's nothing that's supporting any of the weight of the roof. But, I also want some wall space to be able to display things for the retail side of things.
Sure.
I need some wall space because I'm not going to be wanting to put holes in to hang things actually on the logs on the log cabin. I don't want to destroy the property with trying to hang things on those walls. So some of those interior walls with those office spaces, I'd also like to open it up though, basically for general purposes of deterring people from theft. If I left it all in the enclosed, spaces the way they were, and I put things for sale in there, some of it would be walking out the door, more of it than if it was opened up.
Yes.
Could you tell me basically what your proposed hours would be and whether it's seasonal, year-round,
Yep.
employees, that basic stuff?
I'm not planning on starting with any employees. Me, my 83-year-old mom, my sister occasionally maybe, and some friends stopping in and helping out here and there. So I don't picture this being a big retail operation anytime soon, if at all. I might need to hire 1 or 2 employees in the first year. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I wasn't planning on it. I did talk to the city engineers and have them do a traffic trip generation thing for me. And according to this, it's 119 vehicle trips generated per day. That's based on 5 employees, 5 for employees and 10 for residential, plus 104 for general retail. And they said that that's the category it would go in. I don't know how that, really relates to a 1-to-1 for the size business I'm planning. But for the square footage, that's, what they calculated it out to. So in terms of hours, I was thinking maybe 10 to 5, 10 to 6, 4 or 5 days a week. And the, pretty much in the winter, definitely, I would, not be open any later than probably 4 or 5. In the summer, I'd probably have a little bit longer hours, 6 or 7. But I'd definitely be closed at least 1 or 2 days a week. A lot of that's going to go it's going to change based on business. And, if we're not busy, the open flag comes down, and, if it stays not busy for a few weeks, I'll change the official hours. I really don't know yet what the demand is going to be, or, so I'd want some flexibility in that, but I don't want to be open, late hours at night or, early mornings. I'm not looking for any of those, except for maybe on the Marlboro Townwide Yard Sale Day, because I take part in the Jaffrey Townwide Yard Sale, and I have people at my house at 6 in the morning.
But you don't plan on making any changes to the outside of the building, right?
No.
Okay. Same appearance.
Same appearance. I want to do some holiday decorating, definitely, at each holiday. That's something I'm
Sure.
kind of excited about. I would love to be able to put garlands on, out on the posts, and things of that nature. In terms of, like I said, I would probably want to have some retail items be able to be out on the front porch, out on the deck. If I put a welcome to the cabin sign out there, I might or might not want to put a price tag on it. It might be one that I want to keep and not sell. But, like the example with the rocking chairs. There would be things, and, I would want the fenced area, inside to be able to put things in, and, possibly on the outside of the fenced area, but if there was anything, I put, like, for example, some antique metal signs, that would be for retail. They're not signs advertising the business, so to speak, but I would want them to be tasteful. I don't want to have a junkyard. That's something I'm very clear on. I don't want this to be someplace that, I want it to look clean and orderly, and be a place where, it's not only, my own stuff or antiques that are sold there, but I'd like to see community members, rent group space, to sell their crafts, or, one of the examples that I went over with the planning department was, people wanting to sell jams and jellies. And it's my understanding that they make homemade jams and jellies. Anything that is food, whether it's prepared or not, is going to require a health permit and health inspection. And, this is something that's very new to me. I've worked in tech for my whole life. So this is a total change of career for me. And so I will be looking to the planning department for a lot of guidance on what I need to do and how to do it.
Okay. Yes.
One more question, all these get my mind working. For Mr. Clements, what are the rules for outside storage in this zone?
There's no clear prohibitions or allowances. The definition for retail light is silent. Retail heavy discusses outdoor display areas. In my mind, when we're saying retail heavy, we're talking about Home Depot, and they put out all their snow blowers at the beginning of the season, all their ride-on tractors at the beginning of the summer, stuff like that, with like a large garden center. So I don't think, I think giving the applicant some guidance on what would be an appropriate amount of outdoor retail space, if the board so chooses to grant that allowance. And then when we get into the planning side, we can designate an area on the site plan, for example, where that is allowed. And so if in the future it begins to creep, we can bring it back under control.
I think that goes a little bit to the questions earlier, to know, you know, what a reasonable condition is on that kind of limitation if we are unsure of what the square footage is in the various locations on the property. Well, maybe I can turn back to the applicant. Ms. Jay, if you could explain to us a little more clearly where any outside retail would be other than on the porch that you described, and what you would consider to be outdoor retail space and outdoor storage.
Outdoor retail versus outdoor storage is a difficult one because, the fenced area, the things out there would be regularly for sale, and customers would be out there looking at them themselves and picking them up and bringing them inside the store to be able to purchase them. So is that storage, or is that regular retail space? When I think storage, I think about a storage closet that you put stuff in, or, for example, I have a My Box right now sitting in my yard that I've been putting stuff in. And, it's my understanding, if I get it moved over there, that it could be there no longer than 30 days. Perfect, because it would have probably only needed to be there a day or two to get unloaded. Or, storage, for example, I take all my Christmas stuff out, and I'm selling Christmas stuff and I have it decorated for Christmas. Then after Christmas, I take everything that's left for Christmas and I store it. That's storage. Whereas in that outdoor area, I'm not sure I'd consider that storage because everything would be actively for sale at that time that was out there.
If I could make an observation, maybe on the distinction. So the planning board has regulations related to the screening of things. And I believe we have a standard related to the screening of outdoor storage and service areas. Yes, we've got standards related to service areas, which are more related towards like dumpster enclosures and things like that. But in this instance, the outdoor retail, you want customers to be able to see the things to potentially purchase them. Where storage, you probably don't want them to be easily seen from the public right-of-way, so that you reduce the amount of threat to theft, for example. So maybe the distinction is screened from the public right-of-way versus visible from the public right-of-way for the retail use.
I think what I'm getting at is the distinction between what's available for retail use and what you're stashing someplace for next year. And it's not available on a day-to-day basis. Whether it's your pop-up canopies for yard sales or, your Christmas stuff that you want to put away in January until next fall. And I'm just curious as to how that's going to be handled.
Yeah, so there's the 2,400 square feet of retail space or whatever inside the commercial area. I will probably leave one of those rooms walled off for an office in storage that won't be accessible to the public.
You also have a basement too, right?
The basement is in the residence,
Okay,
and I will probably store some of my own personal stuff in there.
sure.
but probably not business stuff, so to speak. And it, it also may come to be that I actually lease that side of the building to, someone who resides there. It's a 3-bedroom, freestanding house. I'm not getting rid of my house in Jaffrey, because I live a mile away from my 83-year-old mom. But both my kids live in Keene, so at some point, I will probably live in that residence. I will maintain a room, probably, for now, we'll see. For now, I need to be able to have the residence available to me while I get moved in and spend a ton of time there setting up the business. But after that, I may rent out part of it or all of it, separately.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I could get some clarification on 80, Section 2, relative to the size of the retail white space, which says 3,500 square feet in gross floor area. Is it safe to assume that that means interior floor, meaning in the building, in the what's going to be the retail side of the building? Or does it also include exterior retail space? Because we're talking about the fenced area being a potential retail space for garden-type products, things of that sort. I'm just trying to get an understanding the total square footage that's going to be devoted to retail.
Is this, you referring to the use standard in Article 8 for retail light? Is that what we're talking
Yes, I
about?
am.
Okay, give me 1 second to look that up.
And part of the interior area of the 2,400 won't be used.
Yeah, so the use standard states in the neighborhood business zoning district, light retail establishments shall occupy less than 3,500 square feet in gross floor area. So that, currently, if the variance would be to be approved with no conditions, there would be no limiting factor like that. I believe Mrs. Shea was saying that the office space is about 2,400 square feet. So if you wanted to say 2,400 inside and no more than X amount of retail square footage exterior, and then that would give the applicant the flexibility to choose where on their site plan that additional retail square footage would be allotted.
But I guess to clarify, my question is, it's more about the rule says 3,500 gross floor space, gross area, floor area. My presumption in reading that is that that's interior.
That's correct.
So we have 2,400 now inside versus 3,500, that gives us 1,100, the variable. And it's going to be probably not 2,400 because you said you're going to maybe partition off or use part of the space, close it for storage or an office. So I'm trying to understand then, if there is to be outside retail space, how does that interface with this standard of 3,500 feet interior space relative to the application?
So the application is not subject to that 3,500 square foot number because this is not the neighborhood business zoning district. So as it stands, there is no limit. It's not allowed at all. So that's what I meant when, if the variance would be passed to allow for a light retail use with no conditions, there would be no limit on the amount of square footage that that use could occupy.
Okay, I guess I'm confused because the proposed use is under 8.3.2 AD. That's why I was bringing that up.
Yeah, correct. And that's just our definition of the use. And then within our definition of the use, there are those specific use standards that apply only when the business is in a specific district.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
So in listening to your explanation, is it correct then that this will require a new site plan and go before the planning board?
Not necessarily, although some level of planning review will be required.
Does that include a site plan?
So if the traffic generation is under the threshold and there's no exterior changes, it may be able to be done through what we call administrative planning review, which is legally not site plan review. However, it is some sort of planning oversight. So we've got 3 levels of site, not site plan review. And with certain thresholds. The next tier up is the Minor Project Review Committee, which is a technical advisory committee that is site plan review. It's a public body. It meets, it's made up of city staff, and we do a site plan review of the project. And usually that's, I think it's 10,000 square feet of impervious surface, a certain number of square foot building addition, things like that. So generally speaking, a project like this is usually just reviewed by staff.
So change of use by itself doesn't trigger?
Correct, not necessarily.
Okay, and does that include exterior use as well as
We look at the
reuse
entire site.
interior to the building?
Yeah, we don't look at the interior of the building. We just look at exterior. So we would want some sort of updated site plan, but it wouldn't be necessarily something that is like prepared by a surveyor or has a professional engineering stamp on it. But we would want some kind of scaled plan to show where on the property changes are being made. And so specifically to this application, we would want to see like a designated outdoor retail area. So that displays can't just wander aimlessly around the property. It keeps things a little more orderly, a little more clean, and it gives the property owner assurances that we know what's going on and we're comfortable with it. And then we're not, on our end, we're not constantly chasing them down when things are moving around.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Michelle, I have a question for you. I heard the comments about sort of keeping the retail on the light side. Would you be, right now you're looking at 2,400 square feet of retail space interiorly, right?
Right, with the exception of whatever I do for a storage room office area.
Forget it, let's set that aside. Office room, storage area would not be included in my comments. It'd be just the floor space dedicated to retail. You have 2,400 now. That's the space you have, the total space you have in there?
In the commercial side of the building.
So you would have to use, within that 2,400 feet, some space for your office and some space for storage. So you'd be less than 2,400 for actual retail.
Correct.
So if there was a condition that limited your retail space to 2,400 square feet, could you live with that? In other words, to keep
Retail, including, if it were,
it would not include office and would not include storage.
right. I would appreciate if the number could include the fenced area. The fenced area and the porch. Those 2 areas would be regular retail areas versus, for example, where I'd set up tables once a year for the townwide yard sale.
Oh, sure, okay.
So, and then the question comes is, my seasonal display that I put out front, would that be considered retail space, or is that just my seasonal display? I'm not sure how, it would be considered by the board.
Okay. What is, give or take, the approximate square footage of your porch? And
Oh,
that
boy.
fenced-in area that you talked about?
Honestly, I do not know.
Okay.
It's 70 by 6 feet. Goes across the whole front.
Yep, the porch, so yeah, it would be 70, the whole,
Here. The length of the
Right.
commercial side, 70 feet, and I see a marking of 6 feet. It appears to be 6 feet for the porch.
Mr. Chair?
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, the site plan currently shows, in addition to that 6 by 70-foot area, the office space being 2240 square feet. So I'm not sure whether your 2,400 includes the porch or,
I'm wondering if it actually included the first floor bedroom in the residence, because they were using it as a residence. They were using that first floor as, bedroom as an office.
no, because you mean the model home?
Yeah, in the model home, they were using that first floor bedroom as an office. So I'm wondering if they included that.
It doesn't appear on the site plan because it does give dimensions for the footprint of the model home.
Yeah.
So I think that's separate. I mean, I
Okay.
can't tell you absolutely, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the assessor's page has got the front porch as 70 by 6, and then the office space, so that's 420 square feet for the porch. And then 70 by 29.
Okay, the site plan shows 70 by 32.
So that's another 2,030.
It's possible the 32 includes overhangs on the outside.
Oh, true, true.
Yeah, and the assessing might be the interior walls,
Yeah.
so we're gonna lose a couple feet back and forth. So we're talking about the office so the office side, not including the covered entryway that separate the uses for the sake of wrapping our heads around all this. And the front porch, you've got about 2,450 square feet just there.
The little entryway in between the connector, I would probably want to include in the retail, but there's not gonna be retail floor space there, actually. What I was considering having that area be, is for people to bring their consignment items in. Not have it be an area that regular retail traffic goes through. The regular customers will come through the front door, in the middle of the commercial side of the building. But, to keep people who are bringing things in that they're going to consign separate, I'd have them use that entrance, which is actually also the handicapped entrance, and for any handicapped folks, it would obviously be their entrance to the retail area as well.
And quick math, I've got the enclosed playground area at probably somewhere between 900 and 1,300 square feet, I think. But that's
Rough.
rough.
Sorry, when you're talking about the connector, you're talking about the space, and I think on that plan, it's hard to read the numbers, but it's 12 feet long, maybe? The
Sounds
connector
about
between the model home and the retail side?
Right,
Yeah,
see,
That would be storage for consignments.
It would be where consignment,
drop-offs.
people that are consigning their products come in and they drop off their product
And then you process it from there?
and put it into the retail space.
Right, okay. That would not be considered retail space, though, from your point of view?
Correct, it's more
Right.
like storage.
Right, okay.
Temporary storage.
Just a quick math here.
Yes.
The 2240 that's listed on the site plan for the building appears to be
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Sorry,
You got caught.
I did. The 2240 square footage appears to be exterior measurements as opposed to the interior measurement. And that, the 32 by 70 gets you to 2240, which is stated on the plan. So that's larger than what the actual interior space is going to be. If I take the 2240 plus the 420, which is the porch, we've got 2660 square feet that potentially could be retail in that, on that part of the building. Then there's the 12-foot entryway, which I think we've determined is going to be storage. If we then look at the fenced area to add that up as the absolute maximum available for retail, not necessarily to be used for retail, but maximum available, if you said 900 to 1,300 maybe, so let's pick 1,000, we're at 3,660. And we know that's gonna be reduced, and we know that this number's high. So I think we're floating around.
But you're not talking about any outside space, exterior?
No, I did include that. That's the, we rounded it off to maybe 1,000 in
Oh, all
the
right, all right,
fenced
so I
area.
missed that, all right.
Not having the exact measurements, but just trying to rough this out, because I know my 2240 is exterior, we know the interior is smaller.
I'd like to get clarification.
Yes.
If I could, because, and I know we'll get into this in our discussion, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the applicant would like additional outside retail space and is considering that fenced area, which is outside, as separate outside retail space. Is that correct?
That's pretty much three-season, pretty much retail space versus where I would do seasonal displays out front, where I would do a Christmas display out where the big sign is, pretty much, on that area. And then also where, like for townwide yard sale, I would set up tables in that area, or on the side over by the residence where there's a porch.
Yeah, I think that, at least speaking for myself, my concern is there a reasonable way to both limit and identify a location for the outside storage? Because one of the things that struck me is that I understand your desire to have outside, not storage, retail.
Yeah,
But it can't be totally unregulated, and the
Yep.
zoning as it is now is, it's wide open.
okay, so if we look at the fenced area, that's, it's a square box, the whole fenced area. That's easily measurable. And then the porch, obviously, that's easily measurable. We can define those areas. If we look at, in the parking lot where the sign is on the other side of the parking, the island in the middle there, do we have any measurement on that? The copy of the site plan that I'm looking at is so tiny, there's no way I can read anything on it.
I feel your pain.
And so I'm wondering if there's a way that we could define like a square footage that could be allowed in that area. and what would be reasonable for in that area.
I can't tell what the area of that island is in this 2003 plan.
And actually, my concern there, and again, I defer to planning, is I don't know how temporary things are, but that would be within the setback. So I don't know if that creates other issues for the planning office.
I mean, just from like a site circulation and a pedestrian safety aspect, I would not want any kind of retail activity there. I'm zoomed in a little bit here. So it's the rural zone, so the setback is 50 feet. We've got a snow storage area here, which can't be encumbered by year-round retail. That being said, any kind of seasonal retail is going to be out of there by the time snow storage is needed. There's also a fair amount of topography in play on the property, as well as the tree line. So as we've been talking, realistically, here is the only piece of the property, and I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing right now. It's behind the setback, and it appears to be unencumbered by topography, or any development.
But that's on the side of the residential unit, isn't it?
That is correct.
That might not be convenient for the retail operation. Now, about that fence on the left side, what's, the picture I have doesn't do justice to the length of that fence off the side of the building. How long is the fence?
It's a great question.
Do we know that? And do we know what the area is behind the fence? Because I assume that's the area you're talking about for retail, outside retail.
The square that's attached to the building, fenced
Well-
area.
The fence, yeah.
And, I mean, it would be great to attach things to the other fence, but I don't think the neighbor would appreciate it. And I would like to be neighborly.
Well, in the picture, I only see one fence.
Yeah,
So that's really all I'm asking about. I don't know where there is another fence, if there even is one, but you talked about using the area by the fence for outside retail. I'm just trying to,
Right now, there's the kids' play area.
is that
That's-
behind the fence?
There is the fence that goes along the property border on that side. And that's, I believe, what's shown in the site plan. And what is not shown in the site plan is the stock fence or whatever that it encloses the kids' play area on the Marlboro side of the building.
yeah, we can't really tell that from the picture or the site plan.
Okay.
There is a fence labeled, and there is a, there's a trash storage bin, which I assume is where the garbage goes. But I can't find those two items either. And the fence that's there now in the picture is not on the site plan. That was put up afterwards.
Correct.
So, but I guess what I'm trying to understand, behind that fence in this picture right here, it's on the, as you're looking at the property, it's on the left side of the building, which would be just on the, I guess, the end of the retail space, right there. Now, what's behind that fence? The kids' play area?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. It's a
And you would not-
it's a three-sided fence. So
Okay.
you go out the side of the building into the fenced area.
Right.
And it's totally enclosed.
And right now, there's just a kids' play area out there.
Right now, they took all the gym equipment out and stuff, so it's just a big lot of recycled rubber, pretty much, which was the flooring of the play area, and a sandbox in the middle.
It's about 1,000 square feet, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, using the 2021 aerial imagery.
So if we take Ed's numbers and add that to the 2660, we're up to 3660 of potential retail space. Because I think I agree with his calculations.
Got the microphone. That's on the high side. Evan, you have the assessor's interior measurements, right? We could refine this a little bit more.
I do, yeah. The interior measurements have it as a 2,030 for the interior of the
Oh,
commercial
so
space.
not too far off from the
Not too far off,
2240.
no.
Okay, all right, we'll stick with that number.
So with that, it's about 3,400.
Right, okay.
Well, I think we can get into some of this in the discussion, but I would suggest that if we're trying to narrow usable external area to square footage, we're not gonna hit it on the head. So whether we, say it should be limited to a specific area, and leave that to planning, to determine how much of the specific area or a percentage of the internal, I don't know, we should talk about that, but I think that we're not gonna have, we're not gonna be successful at trying to designate a square footage.
So where will this go, where will this, if this is approved here, where does it go next? To Keene Planning and to Marlboro zoning?
Did you ever talk to Marlboro about their zoning?
Marlboro zoning is not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, the 16th at 6 PM.
You're getting a variance from them as well?
A special exception, and I'm doing zoning and meeting with planning at the same time.
Okay.
So what's the city's planning board role here? I'm unclear about that.
Very little, honestly. I know, Jane, you just said that you'd rather leave it up to the planning board to come up with a ratio or anything like that, and I don't think it's gonna get to them. So if we're worried about the amount of outdoor retail utilization on the site, we kinda need to figure it out here.
Oh, and that's fine, I think we can get that pretty darn close. But in terms of the interior retail, the applicant's already said that she's gonna need an office and a storage space in there. So do we need to worry about regulating how much retail goes inside as opposed to outside?
No.
I'm thinking we don't.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't, maybe I wasn't clear enough, but I was concerned with anybody trying to designate an exact square footage without us having more information. I was more concerned about either limiting it to a percentage, whether it's 50% of the internal or 60% or something along those lines, as well as the location on the site. So those were my concerns.
Okay, and I guess my question, just so I have a better understanding of what our goal is what is more important? Is the footprint of the exterior retail use or the location of that exterior retail use?
Both.
Okay, so the existing 50-foot setback is going to make it so permanent structures have to be 50 feet from the property line. So temporary, tables going up with displays for a yard sale, or maybe
The townwide thing she mentioned.
yeah, or an artist, like a temporary artisan goods display would be less regulated by that 50-foot setback. But if you wanted to say you can have 50% of your total interior retail space is your max for your exterior retail space. That gives the applicant an understanding of the amount of space that they can work with, and then they can decide where on the property that's going to go, and then they can show that on the site plan and be beholden to that location, and then amend that location much easier than having to come back to amend their ordinance. Excuse me, their variance.
So why couldn't, as the chair said, why couldn't you do both?
It's up to you. So you could say that,
Let me just try to clarify my thinking here. I'm not trying to tell them, other than the setback problem, on a permanent thing. If you want to put tables up there for a day, I don't think anybody's going to care about that one way or another. So what I don't want to do is tell her where to put stuff, like inside the fence where the playground was. If we say you're limited to 2,400 square feet, just hypothetically, of exterior retail space, let her figure out where it is, so long as it's not in the setback, whatever. That, to me, makes more sense than, telling her where to put it.
That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Is either we set a ratio, or we come up with a square footage that the applicant's comfortable with, that the board's comfortable with, and then let her business needs dictate where she's going to utilize that square footage.
And if she has a lot of vendors that day, spread them out. Yeah, that's true. So let me ask this, does anybody have any further questions of the applicant? Because I think we're starting to get into deliberations more than putting this poor lady on the hot seat, listening to us jaw about stuff she doesn't even probably care that much about right now. Do you have a question? Yes.
I would ask that you consider defining, we have our internal inside retail space, permanent outside retail space, and temporary outside retail space. Because for permanent outside retail space, I'd like the fenced area that was the kids' play yard defined, as well as the front porch. And then the temporary outside retail space, define that as a square footage, and we can have it X, Y, or Z place, as long as it's 50, feet back from the, setback, those types of things. Would that be possible?
Well, when you're talking about temporary, is that a day? Is that a week?
A day or a weekend, a week, because townwide yard sale is usually 2 or 3 days.
It's on a weekend though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or, if there's, some other type of event in town, or, we have Girl Scouts selling Girl Scout cookies for a weekend, or, kids doing a car wash. I don't know what types of events I'm gonna end up holding. I'll definitely, be talking to, planning about it to make sure I'm, inside the guidelines for every new thing I try here. But, in terms of just defining the types of, I would prefer that, that front porch and that outside storage area be like permanent retail space versus the, weekend type thing outside in other areas, temporary.
So this is a question for both of you, I think. If we just set aside the temporary retail space for the moment and just did nothing about it and said, okay, you're approved for outside retail up to the front porch and the fenced-in area on the left side of the property. A, is that enough detail for enforcement? And B, is that enough detail for what you need?
And then my question would be is how do we get the other things approved if a townwide yard sale?
Well, I don't think you need
What process
to.
would I need to go through?
I don't know, but I don't think you need to do anything. I mean, your temporary stuff will be at your discretion when you want to do it. I just don't think we can regulate temporary.
Okay,
I mean, I'm not comfortable with saying you should have X number of square feet for temporary, because I have no idea what it's going to be. And if it's going to be up there for a day or a weekend, it's going to come down at night, because you're not going to leave it out overnight, right?
probably covered with a tarp.
Oh, all right.
And then, the idea of doing some sort of display, it sounds like, wouldn't be allowed in the island area. Some type of holiday display, seasonal display. Like I wouldn't be able to put out scarecrows with a bale of hay.
Yeah, and decorations and landscaping are different than retail. Because if it's gonna be retail, you're gonna have people wandering around, looking at stuff, not paying attention to the parking lot and the state highway that's on either side of them, right?
Okay,
Versus like you doing decorative landscaping or displays that are relatively stagnant, and that people aren't directly interacting with.
okay.
Scarecrow displays don't present a safety hazard, except to the scarecrow maybe.
Yeah.
Right, people will be asking if they can buy them, though.
Yeah, and so another thing, the city does periodic event licenses, where if you want to do a car wash, or a yard sale, or the Girl Scouts, or something like that, like, that's not necessarily something that the ZBA needs to figure out.
But it is something that I would require, if I want the Girl Scouts to be able to sell Girl Scout cookies, I have to get some type of permit for it.
Yeah, a temporary event license, I think, would be able to cover that. This is really more about the permanent use of the property.
Yep.
So
Okay.
if like the permanent year-round outdoor retail being confined to the front porch and the fenced-in area would be sufficient for your needs. And then like temporary events are easier to handle. This is really more about, if this variance is approved, the next person you sell this property to is gonna be able to have these special rules, and then the person after that.
Yeah.
So, there has to be limits.
Yep,
And so maybe it's the outdoor area, the front porch, and then 250 additional square feet of outdoor retail space that is
Not within-
outside of the yard setbacks, and that gives you like a little bit of flex space. But the zoning board really needs to look at the permanent future use of the property more than like temporary occasional stuff.
okay.
Is that as clear as mud for everybody? Attorney Taylor, do you have something you want to add? Okay, okay. So, if there are no other questions for the applicant, I'd like to ask if there's anybody here, because I have to, that wants to speak either for or against the application. Seeing none, that was easy. Any last questions for the applicant before we close the meeting and deliberate? I'm good too. So we'll close the public meeting and begin our deliberation at this point. Attorney Taylor.
Yeah, strangely enough, I think this is one application that doesn't necessarily hinge on unnecessary hardship. I have concerns regarding, I guess, mostly public safety, given understanding the nature of the business. And I'm not going to address any particular criteria, but generally, overall, my thoughts. And I don't have any concerns with, the inside retail, the outside retail on the porches and behind the fenced area. What I'm concerned with, and maybe as Mr. Clemens suggested, 250 additional square feet of outside retail. So I think that we still need to designate an area that is, for the outside retail, that is not within that front island setback area because of safety concerns, and not within the parking lot, or paved area, I guess, because it does appear to be paved. Potentially, that additional outdoor retail could go on, I guess it's on the western side, because in summer you don't necessarily, hopefully in summer you don't need snow storage. I don't know how anybody else feels. I think, maybe 250 additional square feet is a nice round number. But again, I would want to designate a location for that additional outside retail that is not on the porch and not behind the fence. I guess I'll leave it at that at the moment.
So ju-
Reserve the right to come back.
Sure, but just so we can move the discussion, the outside retail behind the fence and on the porch is over and above the 250?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I don't have any issue with that.
Just a quick comment
Yes.
relative to the discussion you were leading, Jane. I think the 50-foot setback forces that, call it the 250-foot variable space up to the building into that quadrant on the west side, on the Keene side. Because the 50-foot setback, if I'm reading the plan correctly, is almost to the, very close to the porch,
Right,
if I
but
have that correct.
yeah, but the 50-foot setback does not address temporary structures. So my concern, again, is from a safety perspective. I don't think that that front island area should be used for outside retail. I think there's, area you could use on the western side, potentially a little bit of an area on the eastern side where they show the mailbox and there's a dumpster there. I don't know, I would leave the layout, frankly, to the applicant. But I do think that we should quantify the amount and the location of the outside temporary retail that is not the porches and that is not the fenced-in area. Hopefully that's clear.
May I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
So part of the site plan planning review is the safe use of the property. So things like encumbering parking spaces or drive aisles or things like that, we don't generally allow that kind of stuff. So maybe just specifying not in the parking area and not in the center island may be enough. And then that gives the applicant the flexibility to work with planning staff to identify a safe place for that.
I think that was basically what I was trying to say, and I was trying to demonstrate that there were other areas where outside temporary retail could go.
Okay.
So when you're talking about planning, you don't mean the planning board, you mean that lower tier level administrative planning that you mentioned before? I can't remember the.
Yeah,
how you-
administrative planning review, and then there's the minor project review committee. And just to clarify, both of those, either when it's just staff looking at a plan, a site plan, or the minor project, we're still following the planning board's site plan regulations.
Sure.
And if a proposal requires a deviation or a waiver from those regulations, they have to go to the planning board. Planning board is the only body that has the authority to grant that special concession. So, and especially with the staff level review, it has to check all the boxes.
Gotcha.
Or it gets kicked up.
Okay. Attorney Taylor.
Yeah, and I think that the issue that I raise actually is really just directed at the public health and safety portion of our consideration. Frankly, from the number of times we've seen this particular piece of property before us, I think the property itself creates a hardship, so I'm not going to linger very long on
It
that.
creates a hardship for us.
It creates a hardship for whoever is trying to develop and use the property. So I'm not going to linger on that. I don't think it's necessarily against the public interest if you know, so long as it's regulated to the extent that we consider the public health and safety. So that's why I suggested I guess it would be a condition on the outside retail. The other thing that I think we should consider as a condition would be that it's all contingent on also getting the approval from Marlboro, which is, I think, what we had done the last time as well.
I do recall that, yep.
Yeah, that we made it contingent on Marlboro also approving it. So those were my two concerns.
Well, I agree with those suggestions, especially it was a way to minimize any concerns of public safety. And I would say that I don't think granting the variance would be contrary to the public interest, because retail light is consistent with what's out there in a lot of ways, and a lot of uses along that strip. And in terms of, the spirit of the ordinance and the safety issues, it is along a major highway, and the things that we're talking about will reduce the number of people outside at any one time, and they'll be away from the roadway by what we're doing. So I think that does ameliorate those safety concerns. And the long and short of it is, even temporary kiosks or whatever they're called is not going to alter the essential character of that neighborhood. It might even enhance the commercial value of it. I think there would be a great injustice to the owner or applicant, not outweighed by any public gain if it were denied in this case as well. And I don't see any evidence, nor can I imagine any, that would indicate that there would be diminished property values in the neighborhood if this were approved. Now, just so we have a record, the characteristics of this property are such that you have a connected commercial and residential use. You don't see that often. You don't see that often. It's split by a town line, and I can't remember another piece of property that we've ever had that problem. So I think the way the applicant phrases it in her application is the unique makeup of this property. That is an understatement of the year. So I think there are a lot of qualities of this property, some of them I just named, that make this a difficult property to regulate, and it would make it unfair to apply the retail prohibition to the property, given those unique features. So I agree that these considerations that we're discussing in terms of conditions would be appropriate conditions of approval, and I'll just leave it at that until we get to the voting. Gentlemen, do you guys have anything more you want to add? I don't envy the person who's going to make this motion. Want to give it a shot?
I'll give it a shot, and you guys can correct me.
Don't be so sure.
All right, I move that we approve ZBA 2024-25 for a variance for property located at 973 Marlborough Road, tax map 249-004-000, to operate a light retail establishment in the rural district per Article 8.3.2.AD of the zoning regulations. With the conditions, the easy one is contingent on having the necessary zoning approval from Marlboro. And the second one, to limit the outside temporary seasonal retail to approximately 250 square feet, so long as it's not on the front, I guess I call it island between the two entrances, or in the parking lot. And this outside temporary seasonal retail does not include either the porches or the fenced-in areas of the property.
So just so we're clear, so that retail can occur on the porch or behind the fenced-in area of the property without regard to the 250 feet? Right? Okay. That's how I understand it.
That is my intent.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. You're lucky, you just were glad that somebody else took up the motion, right? Jump on that second train.
Trying to write it down.
All right. All right, so, having said that,
Do we want to include in the condition that that outside retail is allowed on the porch and in that fenced-in area?
I think we did.
I think that's what.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
that's how I
you-
clarified it.
Okay,
So, just so we're clear, the outside retail is permitted on the porch, and it is permitted inside the fenced-in area without regard to the 250 square feet limit. And the other limitation is that there'll be no outside retail in the island or in the parking lot. Is that how everybody understands it? Perfect. Okay. So, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? Unanimous. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? And last, the use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? And on the main motion to grant the application subject to the conditions, all those in favor? Unanimous. That's it. Good luck.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you allowing me to provide input, and Mr. Clements, thank you.
We appreciate your input.
so I'm going to do my best on that condition of approval in the notice of decision, and if we need to work on it a little bit before that letter gets sent out, we can certainly do that.
If you want to email me a draft,
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
do you have anything else?
I guess what I should have done at the beginning of the meeting.
Ooh,
But these are just new. You guys got some of the new ordinance, but then certain articles were all screwed up.
so we're just going to start with a clean slate now, right?
No, this is from Article 14. Hopefully, I still have it.
Yeah, if we need to do it a third time, we'll do it a third time.
What do you,
And I think, Ed, you might have not been
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Right, that's correct. Some light reading for you.
this is one article, huh?
There you go.
No, that's the rest of them. It's from Article 14 to the end. Because when we got the earlier one,
I can't remember what the earlier ones were.
from the beginning through Article 14.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, and like I said, if it's mind-bogglingly confusing, I find it to be, just let me know, we'll figure it out.
Can I just drop my book off and have you guys sort it out for me? Is that too much to ask?
Yes.
I'd ask you to use the odd lines if we were in that case.
I'll wear a dunce hat next time.
Well, I have no new business and no communications.
That means we're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.